Today is the second day of the March-April 86 retreat. We talked quite a bit yesterday about goals. We had started by asking, why does one come here? Why does one sit in a meditation retreat? And looked at what a goal is and how it operates in the mind, what its effects are in the mind and in our way of thinking and acting. And there was something that I had also wanted to go into but didn't get to. Does one come here to a place like this and the retreat which is being offered to participate in because one is identified with this whole process of a retreat, a Zen retreat, a meditation retreat? Because through the very participation in it, being a part of it, one becomes somebody, one is somebody. One acquires or one maintains an identity. One cannot quickly say yes or no. It's unavoidable or it's no problem. But to look at it superficially and in great depth. It has come up recently for us here who work on staff to change the name, to drop this word Zen altogether. Not just feelings of my own, which are not recent, dating back to the very time that we decided on a name, but also many people having remarked to me how loaded in association this word Zen is for them, either positively or negatively. Offering a desirable or positive identity or a negative one. Being associated with its long tradition. As a sect of Buddhism, as a Japanese phenomenon, and so forth. We don't have to go into all of this. I think each one has a repertoire of ideas and responses about this. When we put this word Zen into our name some 4 or 5 years ago, at least for myself, it was to have a descriptive word for what we were doing. Having taken quite a number of facets of a Zen sesshin into here, the cushions, the timed sittings without moving, the walking, the meetings, the talk, and feeling like one does in something one writes, one puts in the bibliography the source of where one has got a quote from. It's an honest indication of the source. But it has not just worked as a descriptive word, because it is more than a descriptive word. And I wasn't going to go into this. Rather, into what one or two people have mentioned to me, namely saying, have you really dropped the ritual aspect in doing what you're doing? Or isn't, and what has been picked out in both cases, some people who've come here, not having been at Zen centers before, I believe, picking particularly on the walking, saying it's really, for an outsider, a very strange thing, people getting up and walking in a circle, one behind the other. Sometimes it was mentioned by both people, this hanging of the head, a certain drab appearance, so it appeared to the outside observer. And there was a feeling there's definitely a ritual going on. At the sound of a bell, getting up, standing sort of more or less in line and waiting till this line starts moving and following each other. One can't label this a ritual unless one really looks, and this is for each one of us to look, what is it that one is doing when one is doing it? What, and watch it, observe it as deeply as we used to watch what we're doing during prostrations or chanting. All the ingredients of it. And that can only be seen if the mind is fresh to observe, has no ties to defend something, to keep something, or to throw something out. What is a ritual? Isn't a ritual something that one participates in, hoping to get something from it? Just thinking right now of a rain dance. Dancing around a circle, invoking certain names and words to make it rain, and the belief in the efficacy of the ritual. Is this one ingredient, belief in it, wanting something to happen from it? And is another important ingredient of a ritual that it is fear-binding. It allays fears through participation in it. You don't have to go into particular individual fears, but fear. Fear being a prime creator of ritual. Fear and the comfort that comes from allaying the fear through the ritual. Most endearing example being the baby or little child with a blanket that is held in a certain way, fingered in a certain way and posture, maybe the thumb and touching the cheek at the same time. One has experimented with little baby apes who have quickly adopted a piece of cloth in place of a mother, and touching that cloth whenever something frightening or unknown, uncertain occurs, and going to that cloth, not to the food bin. The food bin is very secondary. The touching and proximity to the cloth, to the furry cloth, is the prime attachment and binder of fear. One may not be aware of fears that are assuaged or soothed over through participation or creation of a ritual, but anything in this human psyche, mind can be come upon if the mind is open to attend, to listen, to look, not just superficially, but in total, completely, in depth. One person once related to me having participated in a very strenuous and frightening spiritual exercise week at a spiritual center, and seeing emerge in front of his own eyes, as it were, a bathing ritual. During the bath time, he found himself placing all his objects in one way and not in another. It had to be this way, the way he used the soap, the way he washed himself, rinsed himself. I don't know all the details, but he said, I saw it, and yet there was no understanding in depth, but he could relate it, and later interpreted this as the emergence of a ritual which helped to allay the anxiety that the training or whatever was going on there aroused, the chaoticness. Fear is chaotic. The brain is thrown out of kilter, trying this, that, thinking of this, that. It's not in order. And then to order something palpably gives a sense of security and order. Remember myself right now, this memory comes up when I was upset about something that had happened with our son. I would find myself ordering everything on the kitchen shelves and counters. And in more recently visiting with him on quite a new basis, if he talks about something that is upsetting to him, he starts ordering things on his desk or on the table, putting things in neat order. And I recognize myself in there. He's learned it. Not only going through the motions, but the efficacy of it. So now coming back to what one is doing here, can one take it under the magnifying glass and look whether in getting up at the sound of the bell and walking around, there is a most welcome stretching of the legs, straightening of the back, relaxing of muscles that may have tensed, the enjoyment of walking, or is there this other aspect of having to have this as part of what one is doing, finding comfort and security in it? with almost everything else gone, here is something left that is still recognizable as something ritualistic. One doesn't put it this way to oneself, maybe, but is the mind grabbing onto it like that? I want to say at this point, we're not considering doing away with the walking. Besides, people are free to step outside and walk. It'd be nice if we had some walkway around the building. Here comes another goal. Where one wouldn't have to put shoes on or rain gear on, but could walk in fresher air than what is provided in here, particularly right now with this floor having been finished recently. One doesn't have to walk. One can go outside and sit on the bench and inhale, or walk down the hill, or whatever. I don't have to keep saying it. I think everybody is aware of this. But one may be aware of it and yet be timid to break out of the line. When we first dropped requirement to sit in the sitting room, and it had been announced, somebody in the first meeting we had said, "Did I hear right? I don't have to sit there anymore if I don't want to?" And I said, "Yes, you heard right. You don't have to sit there. You can skip around a block a day. It's up to each one what they want and need to do." And the person just uttered a deep sigh of relief. He said, "This is what I've been waiting for all these years of doing retreat." But then he was there the whole time. And I'm not saying this to make fun of this person. Maybe just the relief of not having to be there makes it possible to be there in a new way. Or maybe, as people have frequently reported to me, particularly in the beginning, recently I haven't heard about it, the first time of putting one's shoes on when everybody takes their shoes off has been very difficult. Just doing something that not everybody else is doing, and the associated discomfort with it. Because depending on how we are constituted psychologically, for somebody it may be a great pleasure to do something what not everybody else is doing. That too is a reaction based on some inner rebelliousness, and not on a free doing what at this moment is the thing to do, without reacting for or against anything. So is the bell that is sounded at the end of a round, is that a pure time signal indicating time, sitting time is over, or is there something to the bell that rings deeply? Also, in talking recently to someone who has been to innumerable retreats in the past and at this moment isn't doing anything of this kind, told me of a dream which was, as she reported, a very pleasant and comforting dream in which there were endless, countless bells at every moment telling her what to do. And there was such feeling of taken care ofness in this dream, she told me. Almost a nostalgia. For having all these different sounds, and beautiful at that. regulating one's daily affairs, binding fear, binding insecurity. I remember when we went from 3 bells to 1 bell, it was painful to people. Why not do the 3 sound so beautiful? What's wrong with it? It's just a wonderful thing. But then, since we do operate here to a large extent on consensus, at least among the people who live here and are available for discussing things, we would have to discuss whether it would be a bell or maybe a piece of chamber music, a voice singing. I mean, there are many beautiful sounds. One has to look what something means to one, not argue about it or insist or give in, but look with this openness that is not tied to an image of me not being ritualistic or me being this, no me. Just looking what a preference or an attachment or a wanting something to continue sprouts out of. What is the soil? What's underneath it all? And it takes this very careful inquiry, a careful, I would almost say affectionate listening. Affectionate meaning not harsh, not judgmental, not ready to condemn, put oneself down, compare oneself with others. None of that. So are the little neat brown cushions, they're not so neat right now. I've seen a lot of dust and mud and carrying around, but still the arrangement is neat, is in order. Seeing it coming into this room, does it do something for one, give one a feeling? It's often not verbalized this directly, but is this doing something for me? Does it give me a boost of belonging to this group that does these things? Or can one see a cushion as something helpful in sitting down? A cushion or cushions? A mat as something better than sitting on the floor? An orderly arrangement side by side, avoiding, if one wants to avoid it, to be in sight of another person. Sometimes somebody may be having a habit of bobbing up and down. People used to do this more. I think it comes more with this clenching of the fists and jaws to get something. Then comes this sort of bobbing. Or tiredness, one has not taken a rest, and has been spurred on to forget about sleep and be an ardent sitter, and tiredness makes one bob up and down. Whatever the reason, it may disturb the person who sits next to one, because into one's field of vision comes this pendulum. Then, if that's the case, to move the mat so it doesn't come into the field of vision, if that's a disturbance, and not feel I have to keep this lined up straight because this is what we do here. Move it forward, move it backward, or move oneself in the other direction or sideways. These cushions are not cast. They're there to be used. The bells are there to indicate the time. The block, we've discussed the block at great length. We used to have it hanging here, and it just exuded symbolism in its shape, and new people would remark on it. But it is an effective instrument to be heard more than a bell throughout the house, even though I don't hear it in the apartment. But everybody else up on the 3rd floor can hear it, so we did move it someplace where it just doesn't hang as though it was a symbol. Because the mind is so quickly influenced by the symbols it is used to without even being aware, and yet the influence takes place through this wiring that has happened throughout our body-mind of past experiences. If one can see something like the wooden block, discover the wiring that takes place, and in the seeing be free of it, then it's no problem. But most of the time, the things we see are immediately associated. We'll talk about that later. So is one, as one observes oneself here, coming in, sitting down, hearing the bell, walking, is there any ingredient of ritual? One has to look and find out. Is one identified with a place? Then can one examine what identity is? Thought, image, attachment, being somebody, which is also thought, image, attachment. Also all of that binding fear of being no one. No one special, no one with an identity. Which for whatever reason is enormously important to human beings, as one feels one cannot survive in this life without identities, because one maybe has never been completely nakedly exposed to the fear or just the very happening of being nothing, being denuded of identity. And not making that into an identity. It serves for that too. I have no identity. This can be a new one. So is one using this place and the brown cushions, bells, and sitting to look at all of this, to bring it in the light of day, allow awareness to reveal it, not to judge it. Judgment is not part of awareness. It's a part of our habitual thinking. And in seeing it, dropping it with ease. Dropping is used transitively, there is implied a dropper. But when something is seen as being totally, not only totally unnecessary, but divisive, confining, fear-binding, then maybe it drops on its own. If there's really an urgency, an utter need to face whatever makes up a human being, who is a most representative sample of all human beings. That's what we are. How can we understand anyone if we don't understand ourselves, how we function? And how can we understand how we function if we're afraid to look? Or if we're attached to ideas and symbols and things that don't allow us to look? That we are afraid of losing in the process. Then will one cling, or will one uncover this fear, live with it, feel it throughout one's body-mind, with not a comment to separate oneself from it? Coming back to the goals, because what was said about it yesterday brought quite a number of discussions and meetings. One person said, I presume, this person said, you were talking about psychological goals, wondering whether one needs any psychological goal in sitting, meditating. Because this building here is evidence that there was a goal. Without a goal, we couldn't have built this building. Yes, this is what was talked about. Psychological, spiritual goals. But one cannot neatly divide these from the other goals, technical goals or goals of building a building, because they may be very much intertwined. There was the goal of building this building, have a place in the country, fresh air, opportunity to walk, be quiet from the sounds and noises of the city, and so forth. And for that one has to make plans. I never fathomed how many plans had to be made, which very often didn't even pan out. That's another thing about goals, how realistic is a conceived goal to what actually happens. Usually it has very little relationship. But obviously plans have to be made to get the cement truck and to coordinate this and to have a design. And yet, can one watch as one works toward this goal of having a building grow up to have certain functions? In the process, people working together, can one watch whether there are individual psychological goals emerging and clashing? One can have a very neat goal to build something, but it's human beings who build it. All that comes in human relationship can be watched when one does a project like this, is when in discussing the method A or B or C, is there a factual examination of method A, B, or C? Then it's just a matter of getting enough facts and explaining it clearly. Or is the representative of A insistent that his or her method be adopted, then there's a psychological goal of being somebody or becoming somebody or having power, or the fear in C of being not listened to, being outvoted, or all of these things are observable at any time. And one must be careful not to mix up facts with these psychological dynamics. One can argue endlessly that it is really the facts that one is interested in or wants to bring to pass, and yet it is one's own power or one's own whatever that is the important thing. And one may not even be aware of it because one is not looking. One is deluding oneself. Someone else said that you were talking sort of an aimless way of being. I'm not sure I used that word, but it's all right. Without a goal. We were talking about what have we come for here in this retreat. And can one see the effect and the very nature of a goal, how it takes one away from where one is, projects like an image into the future itself being thought, and then infusing by its very existence. The goal infuses energy, so one does not have to face maybe a state of total lack of energy. One thinks of the goal, and maybe some energy arises again from this very process of thinking of a very desired end result that can energize the whole body, mind. So a person asked, what about in daily life? Is it possible in this society which is so competitive, so goal-oriented, to live without a goal, without a career that is respected, rewarded, approved of by society? Is it possible to live without that? Being here during a retreat, or being on staff, this may be possible, and then one can even question, the person said, being on staff, why is one here? Is one just trying to avoid this problem? So if one raises a question like this, one has to scoop largely, look broadly, what it is that is necessary to live. We were born, we're here. And to take intelligent care of this life that is here, manifested in ourselves, needs to be no problem. Sometimes people, just by thinking about this endlessly, say, well, even if I go to eat or go into a warm room, isn't that ego? Why make a problem out of eating properly, keeping the proper temperature, not too hot, not too cold, whatever one's sensitivities tell one? Having a place to live, and it doesn't have to be a hole. That's an idea too. I shouldn't have ego, I should just live. One can't get away from ideas if there's not this intelligent looking. To pay rent for a house that is, or an apartment that is not a whole, that has some If one is so inclined, one may not care where one lives, but one may have some aesthetic feelings. To pay rent for that and for the food, for the clothing, and maybe for taking vacation, coming to retreat or whatever one feels one needs to do, it takes money. And how is one going to come upon this money? One may have inherited money and then it's no problem, but it may even be a problem then, because often guilt feelings come in. When one has inherited money and one feels one isn't doing what the others are doing. This is like putting shoes on when other people take shoes off. It's an insecure feeling. I'm not doing what the others are doing. But this is an aside right now. How is one going to earn this money to live and to do the things that we've just talked about? Housing, and also this communication, having access to communication, which is the media, or music and art. Again, does one have to make a career with power, prestige, great recognition, or at least a little recognition from the family or from the neighbors? Does that come in, or is that something extra? Can one find something to do that is not totally disagreeable to one that one doesn't hate, that in which there can be some joy, and yet not have any aspirations or ambitions for getting ahead, getting to the top, or getting status? Not denying those out of principle, but looking at what it does. The moment that there is ambition or competition, there is isolation among human beings. There is division. No matter how friendly one talks with a person that one is competing with for a job, that one can be very polite, sort of hypocritically polite, and yet wish this person would drop out or get lost. I can't describe it all, but one can see it for oneself. We're all in this position at one time or another. Is it possible to withstand the pressure of family, friends, neighbors, ex-teachers, to be the apple of their eye by doing what they expect us to do? Can one withstand this pressure by seeing what that is? What it is also for the others who expect, it is also just a filling up of something that is unfill-upable, feeling of inner vacuity, meaninglessness. One may not have had the career as a parent and wants to have one's son or daughter fill that lack. Live through them, continue through them, have them make up for one's own frustrated or disappointed hopes. One may feel that very acutely about one's parents, and one may feel the disappointment one causes them if one doesn't fulfill that need. But is it really helpful to fulfill that need for someone else, apart from the pressure it puts upon oneself and one's family if one has one? As for the work through which we make money, Is there such a thing as an ideal workplace, an ideal job? I don't know. If so, not many people seem to have found it from communicating about this. Is it again that we're looking for the realization of some fantasy? Or is it that we're not capable of working with joy? At least not with hatred or with boredom, because we think what we should be doing or could be doing, or what we will be doing after work, and therefore, we talked about it yesterday, slur over each moment. To try out sometime if each moment opens up when it's not slurred over, because then it does open up. Whether that in itself is much more important than the kind of work one does. This being open, being free from conflict, free from resistance or impatience, discontent in this moment. Allowing the senses to function under no pressure of attaining or of getting it over with. I don't know to what extent such a moment can be a moment of a deep joy. I don't mean an enthusiastic bubbling over, but in a factory, for instance, with a lot of noise. One person told me, working in a room with 60 people, hermetically closed windows as a system of insulation, neon lights, and 60 different opinions about how to get fresh air or not to get fresh air. How does one work in such a place? If this is where one finds work that is basically one's talents or one's training. Not how can I be happy? That's already jumping ahead. One doesn't know whether one will be happy there. But how does one work there? Can it be really, can one give energy to this inquiry? How do I work from moment to moment? How do I work with these people? Or are they just all people, ideas, images? Or in this opening up to the moment, there's also an opening up to the people around one. And maybe a mutual opening up to each other, because it's happening in one, it may happen in another. What is important? This is what we're coming to. What is important in this life? In this moment-to-moment life, what is really important, or the essence? The career, the fame, the achievements, they come and go. For one thing, it's endless. Having attained, having achieved, having acquired, if these drives themselves aren't illuminated, with awareness, with understanding, they go on. We've all recently have witnessed with utter amazement how two people there, the Philippine couple who headed the country, could be, I don't know how to put it, there could be no satiation. It's really interesting to see this extreme ones. It's the extreme of this whole thing which is in all of us, just carried to its extreme of having to have more. If you have thousands, you want more thousands. If you have millions, you want more millions. If you have billions and trillions, you want more of that. There's no end to it, is there? Power, the same thing. So what is really important? To clamp down on these drives, to repress them and subscribe to asceticism. I think we don't have to go into this again. We've talked about it many times. It's just another power trip, power over oneself. And very quickly, if one has attained this power over oneself, one wants to propagate it, have power over others, or have other people have power over themselves, just as I have power over myself. It's also endless. So is the meaning or the essence of life in any acquisition or attainment, achievement, being somebody, becoming somebody, if there is no understanding, if there is ignorance, blindness, unawareness, inattention? If there is ignorance and inattention, our mechanical drives continue, influencing our children and other people to conform in the same way, to proceed in the same way. So can one see the importance and the beauty of coming to understanding of how this all functions? Being a light unto oneself. And then letting whatever action is necessary, come out of that depth of understanding and seeing, listening. Allowing it to sprout and grow. Can we say without a plan, without a goal? Because as we look around ourselves here, what is the goal of this? The life here on this hill, the water, the trees, grasses, the clouds and the sky and the sun and moon. What is their goal? Or is this a totally inappropriate question? It doesn't fit somehow. It comes out of the human brain, which has the capability of thinking and projecting, which may not at all be in accordance with what actually happens. think it's only when there is this allowing the moment to open up and to create. Not I'm creating. When the I is there, there's no creation. There's only expression of self. But when this moment opens up, there's clarity. Nothing special. Then maybe there's this possibility for love to be in this creative moment. We will end here for today.